As a college student, I had the perception that camping was supposed to be painful. My first winter camping trip was a week-long snowshoe trip in the Sapphire Mountains of Montana. I had inadequate footwear, inadequate food, and a lack of knowledge of how to stay warm. Other than when I was in my sleeping bag, which might have been my one piece of gear that was adequate, I shivered the entire time. But it never occurred to me that there was a different way. I just thought, I'm roughing it and it's winter, so of course I'm going to be miserable. It wasn't until my second winter camping experience, an 8-day dog sled expedition in the Boundary Waters with Outward Bound, that I realized that camping, even in the winter, can and should be comfortable. One of my instructors on that Outward Bound dog sled course shared a quote that has become the frame for all my backcountry trips. The quote comes from Nesmuk, a 19th century outdoor adventure writer and guide, who wrote, "We do not go to the green woods and crystal waters to rough it. We go to smooth it. We get it rough enough at home, in towns and cities." Smoothing it rather than roughing it. What a fundamental shift in perspective that was for me. Regardless of the weather conditions, or terrain, or bugs, there are always strategies to make outdoor living more comfortable. We don't need to suffer, especially not just for the sake of suffering. Now, when I lead outdoor trips, I emphasize the goal of smoothing it and ask participants to let me know if they're uncomfortable. I can almost always come up with a way to solve their issue. It's usually just a minor adjustment in gear or technique. For example, wearing different layers, adjusting pack straps, or tying shoelaces differently. And of course, good advanced planning and preparation will help us avoid a lot of the common pitfalls that give camping the unnecessary reputation of being rough. Throughout this course, our goal will be to learn how to smooth it in the outdoors. Tales of heroic suffering make great reads, but our goal is well-planned outdoor experiences. I want you to have the knowledge and skills, not just to survive a trip into the outdoors, but to enjoy your time there. Now, that's not to say that after a few days or more of camping, you won't be happy to have a hot shower and slide in between the crisp, clean sheets of your bed at home. Regardless of how smooth I make a camping trip, there is still joy in returning to hot, running water and a juicy burger. It may surprise you to hear that even a doctor of camping loves returning home. But for me, one of the best, if somewhat unintended benefits of camping is how grateful I am for my home when I return. For example, we don't have a dishwasher in our house, and after weeks on end of hand washing our dishes, pots, and pans, I can sometimes forget how good I have it. It really is fabulous to have hot water that just pours out of a faucet on demand. And being able to heat or cool our living spaces with just the touch of a button, get food delivered, and watch unlimited digital entertainment, we modern humans really do have incredibly comfortable and luxurious lives, even those of us with small kitchens. But it's easy to start taking this all for granted and start to wish that we had more. Being out with just the bare essentials can help us get perspective on the riches we do have. It can help us refocus on what we really need, what is really important. That's one of the reasons I like venturing into the great outdoors. Why did you choose this course on outdoor skills? What are you hoping to gain? There are nearly as many reasons to go outdoors as there are people, and no single reason is the correct one. Of course, there's the stereotypical reason to venture out, to test your mettle against the forces of nature. Western culture has a fascination with the hero's journey, with exploration, with discovery, with summits and long trails, and with pushing ourselves. We love to read accounts of explorers, both historical and contemporary, and the hardships they endure. For many of us, As we read those accounts, we wonder what we would have done in a similar situation, if we would have been as tough, as smart, as courageous. One way to find out is to try some wilderness challenge of our own. Wilderness schools like Outward Bound and Knowles carry this legacy, the outdoors as a place where we can develop character. In fact, Outward Bound started as a survival school for British sailors in the Merchant Marine during World War II. When German U-boats would torpedo British ships and the sailors would end up in lifeboats, the surprising result was that the old, crusty sailors were surviving the ordeal, while the young, presumably more fit sailors were dying in the lifeboats. Kurt Hahn, an educator renowned for his ideas about character education for boys and young men, thought he knew what was happening. He reasoned that the young sailors, in contrast to the old, crusty sailors, hadn't yet had a chance to discover their inner strength. When things got tough, they were overwhelmed by self-pity and despair. Hahn designed Outward Bound to help the young men suffer just enough to learn from it. He believed that through sensible self-denial, the young men became resilient and tough, yet also compassionate. For some people, part of the appeal of the outdoors is escaping the daily grind of society. Going into the wilderness can be an opportunity to have an adventure that adheres to a dramatic narrative arc, complete with rising action, a climax, and a resolution. A structure that is mostly missing in our day-to-day existence. Paulo Coelho understood this when he wrote, "If you think adventure is dangerous, try routine. It's deadly." What's more, for those of us who labor with our minds rather than our hands, goals in the outdoors can be more tangible, and in that sense, more immediately satisfying than what we have through our career. For example, when I was working on my PhD, people would often ask me what I wanted to do when I graduated. I would sometimes reply, "Lead wilderness expeditions." They'd look surprised and ask, "Do you need a PhD for that?" Of course not, but the appeal of wilderness expeditions was as an antidote to the drudgery of school, and as a foil to the lack of achievement I often felt after a day of working at my computer. For some people, the appeal of the outdoors is as a place to escape rigid societal hierarchies. We know the mountain doesn't care about our net worth or our job title. And within outdoor subcultures, including outdoor clubs, a person's social standing is based on their competency. Everyone starts from scratch and improves slowly through experience. What someone does for their day job or where they went to school doesn't matter within most outdoor clubs. The type of social bonds that can occur in this setting, where people start on an equal footing and where they share an experience that can feel sacred, have been described by cultural anthropologists as communitas. It's comparable to the transcendent togetherness some people experience within fraternities or religious organizations. From personal experience, I know that the friendships I've forged in the backcountry are some of my most salient and treasured. Some people go to the backcountry to temporarily disconnect from their hectic lives. One of my favorite parts of leading a trip into the wilderness is when the van drops us off at the trailhead and then pulls away. My entire world then shrinks to contain only my immediate surroundings. I no longer have to worry about my inbox or my to-do list. I've set my out-of-office auto-reply, and I know people won't be expecting that I call them back. I no longer have to worry about managing schedules and keeping appointments. After a couple of days, or even a few hours in the backcountry, I find the chatter in my mind has quieted. I'm then able to live much more in the present moment. In the backcountry, all I have to worry about is not dying and enjoying myself. This is a lot easier and more simple than what I have to deal with at work. In the outdoors, even if I experience some setback, like a torn tent fly or a canoe pinned on a rock, the problem is relatively straightforward. The solution is usually clear, and with some effort, it can be resolved. Are any of these reasons resonating with you? If not, don't worry. There's a lot more. Perhaps you'd like to get away from your smartphone, a so-called digital detox. The American Psychological Association found that more than 8 in 10 Americans are attached to their gadgets, and that people who are the most attached are the most stressed. 65% of us believe that periodically unplugging is important for our mental health. I found, however, that it's difficult for me to break the habit of looking at my phone or computer when I'm at home or in another place where social cues or habit encourage me to get out my phone. But when I pack up for a hike or a paddle, I switch my phone to airplane mode and slide it into a zip pocket in my pack, buried under my extra hat, sunblock, and snacks. After the initial separation pangs subside, I find I don't miss it. In fact, on backcountry trips where I do take out my cell phone, maybe to text a photo to a friend, and turn it on only to discover that I'm out of range from a cell tower, I actually feel a sense of relief when I see it say no service. It's as if I can finally be free of the thing. There are numerous mental and physical health benefits of getting outside. Of course, there are the obvious benefits from the physical exercise. For example, 1 hour of cross-country skiing can burn over 400 calories. But the benefits go well beyond simple calories burned. Some of the best research on these benefits is pulled together in Richard Louv's book, The Nature Principle, a follow-up to his enormously popular Last Child in the Woods. For example, exposure to natural areas has been shown to help with recovery from illness and injury, and even enhance the immune system, lower inflammation, and reduce blood pressure. In the cognitive realm, Louv cites environmental psychologists who have found that time in nature can help our brains recover from the fatigue of continual stress. It can restore our ability to process information, to focus, and to remember. It can reduce the irritability, impulsivity, and impatience that sometimes lead to bad decisions. It can help us be less confused and more creative. I certainly have found that if I'm working on a problem in my office and I find myself stuck without any good ideas, if I go for a walk in the woods, the solution often presents itself to me. Albert Einstein certainly knew this to be true, as he took a walk every day through the woods on the Princeton campus. As for mental health benefits, Louv cites researchers who found that being in nature can help people have a more positive outlook on life and better life satisfaction. Studies that compare people exercising in an urban setting, in contrast with people burning the same number of calories in a natural setting, find that those exercising in nature are in a better mood and have increased self-esteem. They also have significantly lower feelings of anxiety, anger, depression, and tension. These findings are in line with my personal experience. If I'm in a bad mental place and I take a walk through the woods, I start to feel the tension or anger melt away. Another set of reasons to explore the outdoors is more spiritual. At the most basic level, there is the joy of being alive we can feel when we're in the outdoors. The writings of John Muir, the famed naturalist and wilderness philosopher, show us a model of how to approach our encounters with the natural world with joy. Muir was almost ecstatic at times, climbing a tall tree in the Sierra Nevada during a windstorm to ride it, running to the base of cliffs during earthquakes to witness the falling rocks, and climbing under waterfalls. Of course, some of these exploits almost got him killed, so I'd recommend a little more restraint. But joy can sometimes be in short supply, and the outdoors is a good source for it. I can easily bring to mind moments of pure joy I've found in nature. Walking on a beach in Oregon when the wind was so strong that I could physically lean onto it and be held up. Clumps of sea foam were flying past me. Or finding an unknown spring deep in the woods and spontaneously stripping off my clothes and jumping in. These are peak moments, ones that rise to the top when I reflect back on my most poignant memories. Closely tied to joy is the concept of biophilia, an idea most associated with Harvard biologist E.O. Wilson. Biophilia is simply the innate and emotional desire we humans have to connect with other species. Many of us have experienced a deep connection with a pet. Biophilia takes this type of connection and extends it to wild animals and plants. We see this emotional affinity for the natural world in small children. Without fear or disgust, they pick up and play with insects, frogs, or injured birds. As we age, many of us adults forget about that affinity we once felt with the natural world. Going outdoors is an opportunity to rekindle that relationship. When I canoe one particular river near my home, I look forward to seeing the resident pair of bald eagles. If I quietly drift beneath the tree where they perch, we'll make eye contact. Sometimes I'll even quietly say, "Hello," and in response they tilt their heads and study me more closely. Watching dolphins jump, listening to owls hoot, running your hand along the belly of a fish, lying back onto soft, thick moss, these are affective and potentially affectionate connections with other species. Many people find outdoor experiences to be sublime, sacred, or even numinous, the awe-inspiring feeling of being in the presence of divinity. Various religious traditions have aspects of communing with nature. For example, using time in the natural world to grow closer to or even communicate with God, or to discover one's purpose and path in life. Think about some of the words we often use to describe natural places. Canyons as cathedrals, groves of trees as sanctuaries, trips as sojourns or quests. These words contain echoes of the spiritual or romantic vision of nature. Even without a belief in God, many people find the outdoors allows them to find clarity around life's larger questions. In a natural setting, with life pared down to the bare essentials and free of all distractions of modern life, many of us feel better able to reflect and gain perspective. For example, some people find they can better cope with the ideas of mortality and death after spending time contemplating a forest. They find solace in the ancient trees that are finally giving in to exhaustion and, with the help of insects and fungi, returning to humus that feeds new saplings. I could go on listing more reasons to go outdoors: overcoming insomnia, bonding with your family, instilling a conservation ethic in your children. But I imagine I'd be preaching to the choir. You've already chosen this course on outdoor skills, so I imagine you're convinced. And if I haven't listed your reason for wanting to go outdoors, that's okay. There's no correct reason, and whatever you're wanting to find will be right for you. Even so, there are some common barriers people perceive that may keep them from venturing out. Namely, that the outdoors is not for them, that it's far too dangerous, and that it's uncomfortable. Let's first talk about the perception that the outdoors isn't for everybody. It's no wonder this perception exists. If you pick up an outdoor magazine or catalog, you'll probably see images of almost exclusively young, fit, able-bodied, relatively wealthy white people, probably without kids and certainly without bad knees. These images are elitist. They're marketing an image. The outdoorsy ideal has become sexy, fashionable, and big business. Beautiful people in urban areas are now dressing in puffy coats and hiking boots from outdoor brands to ride the subway to the coffee shop. But in the real outdoors, for contrast, you'll find people of all ages, sizes, abilities, and colors. The outdoors is for everybody. It's not just the images that contribute to the misconception that the outdoors isn't for everyone. If you are a person with a larger body and you try to buy clothing from an outdoor retailer, you might find that they don't have anything in your size. Or if you're an older person, you might look at the very thin foam mattresses sold at camping stores and assume you won't be able to get a good night's sleep in a tent. If you use a mobility device, you might assume you won't be able to access backcountry areas. If you're on a tight budget, you might look at the retail prices on gear and assume you won't be able to outfit yourself. If you are a person of color, you might worry about whether you'll be welcome in natural areas. None of these challenges are insurmountable, and this course will help you figure out ways to overcome hurdles that might be keeping you from venturing out. For example, to address the issue of financial cost, much of the expensive gear in outdoor stores is unnecessary. Of course, the job of the outdoor retailer is to convince you that you need it all. So when you first venture into a big outdoor store and start to add up the price tags for everything you feel you need for even a simple outing, your budget may quickly be blown. But once you know what's truly necessary and what is just a gimmick, you can remove a lot of those expensive items from your shopping list. There are also gear swaps and secondhand outdoor stores. What's more, lots of outdoor-specific clothing and gear can be substituted with things you might already have or can find at a thrift shop. For example, some of my favorite hiking pants are just a pair of nylon dress pants that I also wear to work. And one of my favorite trail shirts is just a button-down nylon dress shirt. Nylon is nylon, regardless of the brand. Some outdoor gear and equipment can also be made, even if by someone with even just rudimentary crafting ability. As we talk about clothing and gear, I'll be sure to mention less expensive alternatives. For example, you can make a lightweight cook stove out of a soda can. If you're a person with a mobility issue, the good news is that national and state parks and other natural areas are making progress on providing trails and even campsites that are accessible to wheelchairs, scooters, and strollers. In addition, old railroad grades across the nation have been turned into trails that are accessible. Advances in prosthetic and adaptive technologies are enabling people who are missing limbs to climb, paddle, hike, bike, and ski. Groups like Paradox Sports, No Barriers, Adventures Without Limits, and other adaptive sports organizations around the country welcome everyone to participate in outdoor activities, regardless of physical ability. People without sight are climbing mountains and kayaking the Grand Canyon. Outdoor groups created by people of color, such as Latino Outdoors, Outdoor Afro, and Outdoor Asian, provide a way to connect with other people of color who are interested in exploring the outdoors. A variety of LGBTQ outdoor groups also exist, as well as local groups for older adults, veterans, cancer survivors, you name it. And for all of us, especially as we age, we can take advantage of advances in the design of camping gear that can make our packs lighter and our time in camp more comfortable. Extremely lightweight folding camp chairs and sleeping cots and new designs of inflatable camping mattresses are welcome developments for aching joints. If we listen to our bodies, we should be able to be active in the outdoors throughout our lives, even as we age. As I've matured in my outdoor travels, I've added in trekking poles as standard equipment for backpacking. I've also started to preference canoeing routes with fewer long portages. A portage, or portage, is anywhere you have to carry your boat and gear from one body of water to another, or around a dam or rapid. Beyond these concerns, perhaps the most important factor in realizing that the outdoors can be a place for you is recognizing that nobody is born being an accomplished outdoors person. Everyone starts from the beginning. Learning is incremental and, I would argue, fun, if you don't take on too much at once. There's no need to compare yourself to others who are summiting high peaks or through hiking the entire Appalachian Trail. You're on your own journey at your own pace. Start easy and then build your comfort, skills, and fitness. I frequently hear from people who, without putting in the time to develop their outdoor skills through day trips or overnights, jump in with an extremely ambitious first outdoor experience, such as a multi-day backpacking trip. Usually it's a miserable ordeal, and it often turns them off to the outdoors entirely. These overly ambitious trips make good stories, such as Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods or Cheryl Strayed's Wild. But I'd rather read about suffering than experience it. So I'll continue to advocate that just like any skill, we start at the beginning and we get better through practice. Hopefully you're now convinced that the outdoors is for you. But if you're like most people, you might still be a bit afraid to start venturing out. perhaps because of a fear of being attacked by a wild animal or even assaulted or murdered by another person. Most people drastically overestimate the likelihood of these threats. It can help to put these threats into perspective by comparing them with other risks that are more familiar to us. For example, according to the National Safety Council, a person's odds of dying at home during the next year are 1 in roughly 8,000. In contrast, a person's odds of being killed by a venomous snake in that same period are 1 in roughly 96 million. And as for bears, even in a place like Yellowstone National Park, where millions of people each year tour through grizzly bear habitat, visitors are far more likely to die in a car accident than to be attacked by a bear. Odds of a bear attack in Yellowstone are 1 in roughly 2.7 million visits. That means you're about 340 times more likely to die at home next year than to be attacked by a bear if you visit Yellowstone. If these odds seem unbelievably low to you, it might be because when someone does get killed by a bear, it is big news. It'll most certainly be on all the news outlets. Readers and viewers can't help but want to know the dramatic and gory details. The incident might even be dramatized in film or on a TV program. The incident will live on for years in the popular imagination. Whereas other, much more common incidents, like dying at home, don't typically get covered by news outlets. The result is that, in our minds, we overinflate the dangers of being in the outdoors. Plus, with some simple precautions, we can even further reduce the already very small odds of having an unpleasant encounter with an animal in the wild. As a woman, and as a person who sometimes camps by myself, my instinct is to be more afraid of other humans than I am of wild animals. With animals, I know that I, as a human, am more scary to them than they are to me. But other humans are a different story. I've been told my entire life to not walk alone and to be cautious of other people, especially men. In fact, on the first solo backpacking trip I did, along the Abel Tasman coast in New Zealand, I encountered only one other person over the 4 days, a solo male hiker heading in the opposite way. It was the off-season, and we were both surprised and excited to see another person, and we had a brief but animated conversation. In it, I told him where I was planning to camp that night. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, I regretted it. I thought, oh great, now he knows that you, a single woman, are camping alone on a deserted beach. I spent the entire night in fear, listening for any approaching footsteps. But just as with wild animal attacks, the risk of assault or murder in the outdoors is vastly overblown. Certainly take precautions and be smart, but don't let your fears keep you from going. The frequency of violent crime in the national parks is about 1 attack per 1 million visitors. If the entire country had that same crime rate, there would be only about 320 violent crimes per year total, across the entire country. Clearly, you're statistically a lot safer from violent crime when you're in the backcountry. Of course, when violent crime does happen in the wilderness, it's big news that will continue to circulate for years. For example, if you search the internet for crime on the Appalachian Trail, the first page of results will probably include grisly details of several murders, some dating all the way back to 1974. Reading those accounts would be enough to make you think, maybe I'll just watch a movie instead. But remember to put the risk in context of the millions of people who hike the trail each year. And just as with wild animals, we can take some basic precautions to even further reduce our risk of having a negative encounter with people in the backcountry. Okay, so hopefully now you're not only convinced that the outdoors is for you, but also that it's acceptably safe, especially with some basic precautions. The one common barrier remaining is the perception that being in the outdoors is uncomfortable, that it's an ordeal to be survived through digging deep into reserves of character. For a lot of people, the idea of unnecessary suffering, understandably, doesn't hold a lot of appeal. But remember the quote from Nesmuk about smoothing it rather than roughing it. If you take it slowly and use some of the techniques from this course, you might be pleasantly surprised by how comfortable it can be in the great outdoors. I'm looking forward to this course with you. Helping people gain the confidence and skills to venture outdoors is one of the most rewarding aspects of my job. I hope that you'll share with me some of your experiences as you return home to the outdoors.